You may be seated. Satan's scheme. Bait, hook, line, and sinker. Bait that he's the tempter, hook that he's the deceiver, line that he's the accuser, and sinker that he's the destroyer. And his first and foremost target is the heart. The mind, will, emotions, and spirit of our children. The mind, will, emotions, and spirit of our children. Verse 23 in chapter 4 of Proverbs. Above all else, priority number one is to guard your heart. For it is a wellspring of life. Life occurs from the inside out. Life occurs from the inside out. And it's interesting, since the fall, I think God gave us 4 desires. Prior to the fall, I think God created us with 4 desires at least. This is just me now, getting this from Genesis. And I think they're security, significance, control, and contentment. Security, significance, control, and contentment. Now, Genesis 8:21, as the second of the bookends around the flood, and they both say this. God says this: every inclination of a person's heart from childhood is evil. There's a bent since the first sin in every child and every adult toward evil, to pursuing satisfaction of those desires apart from God. So when we pursue, inside each one of us, we'll pursue significance apart from God, we feel insignificant. And we go more and more down that road and feel more and more insignificant. The more we pursue security apart from God, the more insecure we become. And all our kids are walking around with that. The more we pursue control apart from God, the more out of control our lives become, like it was said in the video. The more we pursue contentment apart from God, the more discontent we become. So as we pursue satisfaction of our desires in our heart, this inclination toward evil apart from God, the more dissatisfied we are. And so that's why the bait to the heart is pride of life, 1 John 2:16. It's the pride of life. If you want to write it down, that's the bait. It's this bait toward my heart to desire life apart from God. Security, significance, control, contentment apart from God with my mind, will, emotions, and spirit, my heart. And that's what the NIV calls boasting of what he has and does not come from the Father, but from the world. This comes from the world. And the first part of boasting of what I have and what I do comes from my heart. And so our kids are walking around with this bent towards satisfying their desires apart from God. And here comes this bait that Satan uses that says, try it. And I want to say this. You cannot be tempted by definition unless you know what's right. By definition, you cannot be tempted unless you know what's right. Otherwise, there's no way you can be tempted. So even though there's this inclination toward evil, this is a Hebrew idea, there is also an inclination toward what's right and what's good. The hook. The hook is dissatisfied desires. That's the deception. The deceiver, the hook to the heart, is that my desires will not be satisfied. They're dissatisfied when I actually sin and pursue the bait. And so I'm hooked. Here's what James 1:14 says. But each one is tempted when by his own evil desire he is dragged away and enticed. And it doesn't satisfy. And I'm hooked, and I do it again and again and again. And that's what our kids are doing. Well, the line that the devil and his accusation as an accuser, he grabs that line, he lifts our kids out of the water, and he's got them hooked, and he says, look, God, evil flowed from the heart. That's evil in their heart. And here's what it says in Matthew 12:35. Jesus said, you know what? That's true. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him. And the evil man brings up evil out of the evil stored up in him in his heart. And then the sinker is that God hates that. God hates a heart that devises wicked schemes, that devises life apart from God. God hates that. And so now you're in real trouble. You're sunk. Because this is directly opposed to the heart of God. Evil is the absence of life with God. Evil is the absence of good. Proverbs 6:18. Proverbs 6:18. A heart that devises wicked schemes and feet that are quick to rush into evil. These are the things that the Lord hates. 7 things that we see in Proverbs 6 that we're going to keep going back to. And he hates a heart that devises life apart from God. And it's in every one of our kids. There's a girl that I've coached in basketball a little bit, and she struggles and has been open with me and some of her friends about her struggles of the desires of her heart, the inclination toward evil, to life apart from God. And so she struggles a little bit with being depressed and things like that. And we were sitting on a bench during a basketball game, one of those rare times when we were up 60-10. And I leaned over to her and said, "Is it a good day or a bad day on the inside for you?" And she told me that the day before had been kind of good and today was kind of bad, and it's always a little bit of both. And I said, "You know," and I called her by name, I said, "My concern for you is this, that the desires of your heart that aren't being satisfied end up thinking that they'll be satisfied with the first boy that comes along and shows you attention. And you're gonna get hooked by the bait. And it's not going to satisfy, because only God can satisfy those desires."